Good afternoon, everyone. We hope that you had a fantastic third day of the North Carolina FFA State Leadership Conference. I know my teammates and I are very excited for all the new things you got to learn and got to do this week, but we're also kind of sad that this is our last day of State Leadership Conference. At this time, I will pass this over to Mr. Bledsoe, who has a few remarks for us.
Hey, thanks, Elizabeth, and good afternoon, everyone. It is kind of bittersweet, right? I mean, I hope it's been a great week for State Leadership Conference, but when it comes to a close, it seems like we just got started with opening session just a few hours ago. So I echo those comments. I hope you've had an outstanding week. And thanks for letting me bring a few comments this afternoon. Just some reflection, right, as we bring the week to a close. This week has been about advocacy and telling our story. So I'm always very fortunate and always counted a privilege to be able to say that advisor's part in the opening ceremonies and get to see all of you either virtually or in person when I get to do that. But I thought if it was okay, I would take a lesson from what we've learned this week. I'm Josh Bledsoe. I'm originally from Dobson, North Carolina. I grew up one generation removed from production and agriculture. But my grandpa still had a garden that could probably feed half the little town that we lived in. And my other grandpa raised enough beef cattle to fill many of our freezers in the wintertime. So one generation removed. I was in 8th grade at Dobson Elementary. Now, some of you may know where Dobson is. Really, there's nothing spectacular about Dobson. Next door, the town next door is Mount Airy. So y'all know Andy Griffith and Mayberry. So that's our claim to fame in Pilot Mountain, right? So it's 8th grade. I'm at Dobson Elementary, and it's time to sign up for classes. As an 8th grader, I had no idea what I wanted to take when I got to high school. I mean, we'd start changing classes. That was kind of a big deal, right? Because we were K-8. We didn't have a separate middle school at that time. So I signed up for something. I had no clue. So our first day of school comes, first day of high school comes. I'm in 9th grade. We're in a homeroom class. And we got our schedules, and back then they were printed on a computer dot matrix printer on tractor feed paper. You probably don't know what tractor feed paper is. It's where the paper had this little perforated edge and little holes along the side, and the printer would like with little wheels move the paper up through. So that's how long ago it was, but it was computer printed. So I'm looking at my schedule, right? I got my schedule in my hand, and in the schedule it says, like your period, what period, like first, second, we had 6 periods in a day. And then in one of my class courses, it said ALG 1. So I was thinking, okay, so algebra 1, okay, that's great, that's good. And then right below it, it had intro to AG, INTRO, intro to AG. So I go to my homeroom teacher and I said, Miss Johnson, why would I be in introduction to algebra and algebra 1 at the same time? And I see the officer smiling. I hope you're smiling too, everybody else. And she just shook her head. And in true North Carolina fashion, she said, bless your heart, young man. That's intro to ag. And I said, intro to ag. I don't think I signed up for introduction to ag. And she said, well, you've got it. And it's in the ag building, and she pointed to the direction of where it was, and that's where you'll go today. And I said, okay, thank you, Miss Johnson. So there I am. I walk into Mr. Vestal's agriculture classroom at Surrey Central High School, and I guess you could say the rest is history. I got super involved, right? Like I did tool identification as a freshman, got to state convention for the first time, was blown away at the number of folks in FFA jackets. I didn't know they were so cool until I got to Raleigh and I saw all of these folks in blue corduroy. And here I showed up in jeans and a shirt, you know, like a polo shirt. I had a jacket, but we come straight from the van. We got straight to Raleigh and the session had just started. So we didn't even change. I was in dairy judging. I did parliamentary procedure. I was a chapter, federation, district back then. We didn't call them regions. We call them districts. I was a district officer and eventually was fortunate to serve as state president. for FFA here in the state. Now, I went to NC State, got my degree in ag education. But here's an interesting part. Before I came to NC State, before I majored in ag education, I knew I wanted to do something in ag, right? I mean, like my freshman year, I had no idea like what I wanted to do. I didn't even know what ag was, right? Well, I did, but I didn't know I'd signed up for the class, right? I didn't know what you would really learn in that particular class, but I stuck with it. And I remember going to this program through the North Carolina Farm Bureau called IFL, the Institute for Future Ag Leaders. They showed us all these careers in agriculture. And the very last session, toward the last session, they talked about agricultural education. And the whole week I was like, man, I just can't decide. I love all these areas, right? Like animal science is really cool and horticulture is awesome. And yeah, forestry is really neat too. And, and. But then it got to ag education and they said, do you like all these areas of agriculture? And I said, oh, yeah. Do you like FFA? I'm like, yeah, I love it, right? So Eiffel and my agriculture teacher, Donald Vestal, pushed me and encouraged me that freshman with that awkward, is this intro to algebra and algebra one at the same time mindset, directed and steered this old fella to a career in agricultural education. So for 26 years, I've been fortunate to be an agriculture teacher and to serve on state and even national staff. And I can tell you that I appreciate the coaching of an ag teacher and the opportunities afforded to me in this wonderful organization that we all love. So no matter your background, no matter if you know what you're going to do or what you don't know that you want to do, or what you don't know what you don't want to do, it doesn't matter if you're the first generation going to college or if everybody in your family has been in college. There's a place for you here in FFA and in agricultural education. And if anything, I learned that wherever you're planted, bloom. I appreciate being people who encourage that blooming, right? The watering and the fertilizing and the weeding that happened to help me bloom where I was planted. And that's my story. And that's the power, I think, of advocacy and the power of this organization to help us become advocates for agriculture, ag education, and FFA. Again, that's my story. Thanks for letting me share. Now, speaking of stories, I've got another one that I'd like to share with you. It's the story of Autumn and Erica, and they're two members from right here in our state at the FFA chapter at the School for the Deaf. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to watch a video of Erica and Autumn.
Hello, my name is Autumn, and I live in Kernersville, North Carolina. And I took agriculture last year, and this year I'm taking ag science and also ag mechanics. The reason I took this class is because I enjoy learning new things, and also I enjoy taking care of plants and learning about how to fix things. Eventually, my goal is to become a vet.
Hello, my name is Erica, and I am from Shelby, North Carolina. And the reason I wanted to be a part of FFA is because I enjoy learning about the different tools and different types of plants and trees out in the environment. Last year, I took ag science, and this year I'm taking ag mechanics. After high school, I would like to major in nursing.
We are both representatives for FFA here at North Carolina School for the Deaf. This is our FFA charter that started with 10 members. We started it in February 22nd, 2018. and we were the third deaf school in the nation to have a chapter. We won an award from FFA for being the first deaf school. We were the first deaf school to win an award from FFA.
This is lettuce. These are a tomato plant and also a cucumber plant. A pine tree to represent Earth Day. We also made a disinfectant spray that is non-toxic. We made an electrical display. It has different electrical wiring and also a light. Through trial and error, we were successful. Here we have lots of different tools, and there's 200 different types of tools.
So in the beginning of the school year, we were still remote because of COVID, and so we decided to design our own FFA masks. We also sent out some emails to get some votes for the names of these two pigs. We sent it out to the entire school. This pig is named Marshmallow, and this pig is named Coco. And they are placed just outside of our FFA building. So here we grow different kinds of herbs. This is parsley. This here is rosemary. And then we also have sage, which is also an herb.
During FFA week, we had shirts made to represent our school motto. Learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, and living to serve. And FFA is 93 years strong. We also have FFA mask, and jackets. Thank you for watching our video about FFA and learning about all the programs that we do here.
We have really enjoyed working and learning in FFA.
That was a cool video. I hope you enjoyed it. So Autumn and Erica, they were telling about their chapter, right? So their advisor, Mr. Reed Ledbetter, he sent us the link to this video. When I say us, he sent it to us on state staff. We thought it was outstanding. So many of you know, every Monday, we send out an email to everybody across the state that's on our listserv. That email goes to about 800 different people. So we put the link to this video as an example of what a way to tell your story, right? Your local chapter. So it goes in the email. One of the individuals who is on that email list is Nina Crutchfield. You may or may not know Nina Crutchfield. Paxton, I see you shaking your head. You know Dr. Crutchfield. So Nina is our state relations specialist who works for National FFA. So it's like a regional coordinator, like Mrs. Jennings and Mr. Von Cannon, except they have the nation. So Dr. Crutchfield gets this email every Monday. She sees this link to this video. Dr. Crutchfield in turn shares it with, I think, the entire staff at the National FFA organization and the National FFA Foundation. So they're seeing this video. Then this individual that works with the foundation named Kim Wesley, Kim sees this video. Now, Kim works with different organizations and companies that help raise money for the National FFA Foundation. One of those companies was featured in the video. Did anybody see what company was on the mask that Autumn and Erica put up to the camera? So put it in the chat if you recognize the company that was in the middle of that mask. I'm going to wait and see who can give me that answer. Oh, here they come. You got it. Tractor Supply, TSC. That's right. So Kim Wesley works with Tractor Supply Company based out of Tennessee. Kim shares that video with the folks at Tractor Supply Company. I don't know how widespread that video went, but folks in Tractor Supply saw the video. And then they decided they wanted to do something. Did you notice the jacket that one of the young ladies had on? Did you notice something that was maybe a little different about that jacket versus maybe your jacket? Did you notice anything different besides the name at the bottom, right? We all have where we're from. It said North Carolina, School for the Deaf. But on the front of the jacket, did you notice anything different? What did you notice different? Put it in the chat. Anybody notice anything different about that FFA jacket? No responses. Was something missing? Yep, that's right, Miss Bracy. Was something missing on the front of the jacket? I'll tell you, it was their name. So FFA advisors are able to buy a chapter set of jackets, right, from the National FFA. And so that was a chapter jacket that the student was wearing. So at Tractor Supply Company, when they saw the video, they noticed that jacket didn't have a name on it. This week, months after we shared this video, we get an email. We being Miss Bracy, all of us here on staff, Miss Bracy shared it with us. We get an email this week, and it's a thank you letter from Mr. Ledbetter and these two students at the School for the Deaf to Tractor Supply, thanking them for providing them with their very own FFA jacket. It started with a video at their chapter just talking about what they did. It wasn't professionally done like by this fancy film crew, right? It was probably done on somebody's phone. It was compiled, and if you noticed, it was shared on Facebook, and you can see the path that this video took to come back to these two young ladies getting their own FFA jackets. If that's not advocacy and telling your story in action, I don't know what is. You can't make that up, friends. And that's just one example of the really cool things that are happening across our state in local FFA chapters, just like yours. In the manual, the FFA manual, it says that the heart of the organization is at the local level. And we say that so many times, but I hope you see from this story that it really is, the heart really is at the local level. Margaret Mead once said, never doubt that a small group of citizens, thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever can. These two young ladies are a fine example of thoughtful, committed citizens willing to tell their story. They talked about why they got in agriculture. They talked about their program. They shared what they were doing. And you never know the ripple effect that story that you tell will have. This example shows how it made it to corporate tractor supply in Nashville, Tennessee, and it came back. So the seeds that these young ladies planted, right? They were blooming where they were planted, and those seeds that they planted grew, and you can see the harvest came. They benefited, but think about the impact that video had on so many different people that showed what that FFA chapter was doing. That's all you got to do, friends. Tell your story. Tell it with genuineness, with compassion, with passion, with humility. Tell it with those character traits that you learned about this week, about how we develop our own character, and be you. You may think, this story is not very cool, right? Like when I was going through it as a freshman in high school, I'm like, I'm not very cool. This isn't a neat story, but man, how cool is it that over 30 years later, I can share that story with y'all as a testament of the power and impact of our great association and our great organization. FFA members, just like Margaret Mead said, you are world changers. I know it. I see it. And I'm so proud when I see what you're doing at the local level and how that story that you're telling and that project that you're doing and that school event that you're representing, when you've got the blue and gold on, whether it's the corduroy or a polo, it doesn't matter. You're representing it every single day, and you are changing the world. This year, as you think about the challenge that Miss Bracy gave us a couple of days ago, to really think about how we take what we learn here and use it in our programs. Go change your school, go change your community, go change your chapter, go change the world. But it all starts with you and you telling your story. Go change the world this year, friends. I'm awfully proud of what I know you'll do and what I know you have done. Have a great year. Miss Elizabeth, thanks for letting me share a few thoughts this afternoon.
No, thank you, Mr. Bledsoe, for teaching us the importance of telling our own stories when it comes to advocating, not just for the agriculture industry, but for our FFA organization as well. Well, I'm very excited and honored to be introducing our next speaker. I actually had the privilege of getting to know this person last week at our State Officer Summit as one of my small group leaders. He was one of the most genuine and nice people I've met at Washington, D.C. And everyone, I want to give a warm welcome to our national officer from the Central Region, Mr. Paxton Dahmer.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. I appreciate that. And man, I'm gonna have a hard time following Mr. Bledsoe with that story and or those stories, I guess I should say. That was a fantastic set of remarks there. But I'm so glad y'all had the opportunity to have a fantastic state leadership conference this year. It might look a little bit different, and that's okay because the world looks a little bit different right now, and we're rolling with the punches and making things happen. And it sounds like it's been a fantastic experience so far. So I'm so glad y'all are getting that opportunity. When I think about life, it talks about in the creed having an abundant life. And when I really sit there and I really think about what the creed actually means, what it means to have an abundant life, one of the things that always comes up in my mind is to be able to sit back at the end of the day and just simply feel sorry, I just got my tongue caught up there for a second. To be able to sit back and feel fulfilled, to be able to feel fulfilled. Now, that feeling of fulfillment comes in so many ways, shapes, or forms in everyday life. For some of us, it might come through a career. For some of us, through sports. For some of us, through fishing, hunting, farming, and all of the above. We all have different things that make us feel fulfilled. But at the end of the day, to be able to have an abundant life, we need to be able to sit back and have that feeling of fulfillment in our minds. You know, it makes me think on our state officer summit that actually happened just last week, as Elizabeth mentioned. And during the virtual portion of our summit, we had a hybrid conference going on, the first ever hybrid conference that National FFA ever hosted, actually. And we had a TV that was sitting in the conference room with us, and one of the national officers was assigned every session to get to watch that chat. And some of the state officers here could probably attest to the fact that the chat was pretty interesting most of the times. But one of the state officers from, I believe, the state of Ohio, when we were talking about reflecting, the reflect portion of the advocacy model that you all learned this week, the plan, develop, do, reflect portion, we had a session on reflecting, and one of the state officers, that's a pretty quiet state officer, threw in the chat that the first time that she got to speak to a legislator on a Zoom call, she finally felt like she was doing something she never thought she could do and actually making a real difference in her communities. She finally felt like she was doing something she never thought she could do, and she felt like she was making a real difference in her communities. And based upon that response that was thrown in a Zoom chat, pretty simple, I can tell that she had that feeling of fulfillment in her heart that day, and she was living an abundant life at that moment. You see, during State Officer Summit, state officers from around the country got the opportunity to head to the Hill virtually and advocate to their senators, to their congressmen and women, and to all the members of our legislature, with over 108 total visits about broadband access and what that can do for students. And I think right now, the conference format that we have, where we're all Zooming in a hybrid format here, is a true testament to the need for broadband access. And it was so cool to get to watch state officers do that and be advocates for that cause. But I think the really, really cool piece of that was that state officers, like that state officer from Ohio, felt that piece of fulfillment, like they were doing something they never thought they could do, like they were making a real difference. And as advocates for agriculture or for career and technical education, or even something like broadband that is intertwined in those two things, but also a separate issue in its own right, advocacy, when we get to be advocates for those situations, when we get to do the plan, develop, do, reflect model, like y'all have learned this week, we get that feeling of fulfillment. That's what advocacy can do for us. A couple months ago, in March, before we got out on the road and got to travel, I got the true privilege to get to participate in Hawaii FFA's virtual state convention. And let me tell you, they do things differently out there. It started about 8 o'clock Indiana time and ran until about 1 a.m. Indiana time. And so I always got to, chug a Red Bull before I went in, whatever it took to really get amped up for this session. And I remember between sessions, so it was held over Google Meets, which is a different format in its own right than what we might know for either an in-person or a virtual state convention here in the main portion of the United States. But on that Google Meets, it was really, really casual setting, which I thought was so cool because these students were going through virtual school. In fact, they're getting ready to go into another virtual school year on the islands. They had been disconnected from one another at a physical distance for so long, and getting to be in that casual setting promoted conversations in the chat out loud. In fact, there was one student, I remember her name was Halen. We were doing an ag issues demonstration. So similar to like an Ag Issues Forum, and they were doing their demonstration over Zoom, and it was really, we were supposed to be quiet, have our cameras off, and she was so engaged that she actually turned her volume on, turned her camera on, and was trying to talk to the participants. We had to shut her down per contest rules, but it was a really casual setting, I guess is what I'm getting at here with Hawaii. And between sessions, I got the true privilege to get to know two students, Vina and Janella. Now, Vina and Janella, they're going to virtual school. They're at a physical distance. It's really easy in that situation to focus on yourself, focus on your mental health, focus on your actual health, because let's be real, we were in the middle of a pandemic really heavily at that point, and it's so easy to focus inward in that situation. But these two students really kind of embodied what it meant to be an actual advocate in life. So while they live in Hawaii, while they have limited resources, they applied for a grant and received a $200 grant for part of their SAE through the SAE grants program that most of us are familiar with. And if you're not, check it out. Shameless plug there. But through that $200 grant, they were able to try and look outward rather than inward in that situation and identify a cause that they really thought that they could help benefit. And from this, the idea of their SAE, which is now called Conception of Dreams, and I love that title, but that idea was formed. And so they started working with an orphanage in the country of Uganda. So that's in the continent of Africa, so completely across the globe. They've never been there. They've seen pictures on Google, and that's about it. But they were hooked up with an orphanage in the country of Uganda, and they started sending funds over there. Now, take a moment and think about your morning routine. When I get up, I get in the shower, I use shampoo, I use conditioner, I use body wash. Then I get out, I brush my teeth, I shave my face with a razor, I use shaving cream, then I use aftershave. I have all of these different things that are parts of my morning routine. I have about 3 hairs left up here, but I use a little bit of gel on those. All of those different things I take for granted every single day. And what they realized was that those students that were at that orphanage in the country of Uganda didn't have those things that we take for granted every single day. They didn't have, shampoo and conditioner. They didn't have a toothbrush and toothpaste. They didn't have gel to put in their hair, and all these things that we hear every single day about how fortunate we are and we never really think about. They actually don't have those. And so Janella and Vina decided to use their SAE to make a difference in the world. And so they started sending funds to that orphanage and provided these students that were at that orphanage with the everyday necessities that we take for granted. Now that's advocacy in its own right there. They're advocating for students, actually. We don't have to be advocates for ourselves. We don't always have to be advocates for agriculture, but we have to be advocates for something and live that life purpose. And that's what Vina and Janella were doing through that. But it's grown since then. And because they were advocates in that moment, and because they constantly use the plan, develop, do, and most importantly, reflect portion of that effective advocacy model, they actually have transformed conception into dreams into a program where they're starting to build a sustainable ag system for that orphanage. So they're helping them learn how to farm. They're helping them learn how to manage nutrients and fertilizers and those types of things that we all know about over here that they might not know about over there. And through their efforts, their hopes are that they can help that orphanage establish a garden big enough to where they can grow their own food for that orphanage and it can be completely self-sustaining. Now that's incredible. Just think about that. 2 high school students in a virtual school format looked outward rather than inward, and they're making an actual difference, not only in the state of Hawaii, not only in the United States, but literally a global impact right there. And that is what happens when we're advocates. That's what happens when we get to use this blue jacket right here to propel us forward, to put that advocacy model into effect and actually focus in on each element of that. And you'll see an incredible return on your investment right there each and every day. The fact that you're attending a state leadership conference tells me that odds are there are probably some chapter officers out there. And if there aren't chapter officers out there, there's probably some students that eventually will be a chapter officer or a district officer or a state officer, or maybe even one day you'll get to sit here in 6060 in Indianapolis as a national officer. And that's the possibility that we have here at State Leadership Camp. But each and every day that you get to be a chapter officer, a district officer, a state officer, or even a national officer, you get to be an advocate for students. We talk a lot about agricultural advocacy and telling our story, but also there are 760,113 other FFA members that get to wear this blue jacket that we have to be an advocate for. Whether we're an officer or not, we get to stand up and tell their story as well. We get to talk about their experiences and expand our thinking so that they have an advocate as well. Because let's be real, every child needs a champion. Every child needs an advocate. Every child needs someone to stand up for them, myself included. Mr. Bledsoe, when he was an FFA member, he probably needed the exact same thing. And we get the opportunity to take that advocacy model that we've learned this week and not only apply it to agriculture, but apply it to education and students as well. And that's so, so important. There was a state officer in my small group, and during our state officer summit, that told a story about her experience when she was elected chapter officer for the first time as chapter president. And it was a heartbreaking story, and we all got really, really serious in that moment because it was so unique that she was willing to share that. But that student needs an advocate, and she's actually really stepped up to the plate and been her own advocate in that situation and accomplished fantastic things. But her story was a true testament that every student needs an advocate at some point in time. Every student needs someone to stand up, and everyone that is attending State Leadership Camp this year can be that advocate, can stand up for those students, can reach out to elected officials, to ag teachers, to school administration, to state staff, to state officers, to district officers, to chapter officers, and everyone in between, and advocate for those students, tell their stories, and really hone in on the importance of that. I started this out by talking about the feeling of fulfillment that you can get from being an advocate. I guarantee you, Vina and Janella have that feeling of fulfillment every single day when they're working on their SAE project. They might only work on it a couple hours a day because let's be real, we all need some time to go to the beach if we're in Hawaii, right? But every single day when they sit down at their desk, when they focus in on conception of dreams and try and determine where that goes in the future, they get that feeling of fulfillment because they're helping students. That state officer that I was telling you about every single day gets the opportunity to have fulfillment because now she gets to go back and help students. She gets to teach them about ag advocacy. She gets to stand up for them, tell their stories, and make sure that nobody gets left behind in this organization. And that's what advocacy can do. If we use that plan, develop, do, reflect model that I've referred to, that I saw in the video that I'm sure you've learned all about this week, we have the opportunity to feel that feeling of fulfillment, to propel ourselves and other people forward with us, to make sure that this blue jacket and all the traditions that we hold so near and dear to our hearts in this organization get to come right along with us into the future. It's important. I rely on advocacy. These state officers that are on this webinar right now rely on advocacy. Every student in this organization relies on advocacy. Education relies on advocacy. Agriculture relies on advocacy. But most importantly, the country that we get the opportunity to live in relies on advocacy. And we are the people that get to do that. With that being said, I hope that you enjoyed State Leadership Camp. I hope that you learned something that you can take back to your chapter and really use to make a difference. Because let's be real, we need advocates in this world in every single sector, more and more every single day. I'm so proud that you took the opportunity to be a part of this, and I'm so thankful to get the chance to join you in this way today. But with that being said, Elizabeth, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you all so much.
Oh yeah, let's give Paxton a round of applause. Yes, thank you, Paxton, for telling us all those stories about how advocacy is very much needed, especially in a world that we get to live in. So friends, this week we got to learn about the importance of advocacy for ourselves, for the agricultural industry, and for our FFA organization. Friends, after being online for over a year now, let's be honest, we are the biggest tool and biggest asset when it comes to our FFA chapter and rebuilding them after a year of only virtual events. I know my teammates and I are super excited and super hopeful to finally be able to see you guys real soon and in person. And I know my teammates and I are beyond excited and proud on every single one of you that has joined us here for our State Leadership Conference, because we know you are going to be the catalyst for a positive change within your own FFA chapters, regions, and our own association this year. Mr. Secretary, do you know any further business which should now be transacted?
Madam President, I actually do. On behalf of me and every other state officer here, we are happy to announce the 2021-2022 theme for North Carolina FFA, and that is Reignite.
Does any member know of any new or unfinished business which should probably come before this meeting? We are about to adjourn this meeting of the North Carolina FFA State Leadership Conference. As we mingle with others, let us be diligent in labor, just in our dealings, courteous to everyone, and above all, honest and fair in the game of life. Fellow members and guests, join me in a salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I now declare this meeting adjourned.